Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Thursday, the 31st of March. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Joshua Barrie. We're slightly later, folks, just some technical issues. We've not slept in, I promise you. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good. I was in the office, Derek, at 8:20, so I definitely didn't sleep and I was up at the crack of dawn. But no, good to be here. Looking forward to chatting ahead of Sunday's big game, and thanks to everyone for being patient with us and waiting for a prolonged ad break.
Yeah, keeping them on tenterhooks. Folks, if you're watching this for the first time, remember on YouTube, if you hit that subscribe button, it means you'll never miss a video when we go live. And we've got a terrific offer on the Rangers Review site just now. It really is fantastic. £1 for 2 months worth of content. And as well as that, you also get entered into a prize draw to win a tour of Ibrox from a club legend. It really is absolutely outstanding. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. Let's talk about all things Rangers then, Joshua, and a piece that you've put on the website this morning, just basically detailing how Rangers can take lessons from Bodo Glimt, who Celtic recently came a cropper against in the UEFA Conference League. Can you tell us, give us a wee bit of insight into what subscribers can find on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can read the whole piece, which is quite long, to get a bit carried away with it. But you can read the whole piece for just £1. And as you say, great incentive to have an Ibrox tour with a club legend as well, Derek. I think it splits into two sections. Firstly, with the ball, and secondly, without the ball. So to refresh our memories, if we must, if you look back at the 3-0 defeat that Rangers suffered in the last Old Firm, they did two things that were quite, exploited quite obviously. One was they kind of marked man for man in midfield, and Celtic, they're a good attacking team. They're undefeated in 25 games domestically, and I think Rangers kind of created the perfect environment for them to play their football. And what I mean by that is they weren't compact. They weren't hard to play through. There was loads and loads of gaps. They tried to keep Kent and Amad Diallo high, but not to very good effect. And that, as I say, played into Celtic's hand. Now, Rangers have changed things since then. We know they're now playing Lundstram and Jack in the middle. We know they're maybe playing Scott Arfield or Aaron Ramsey is almost an extra midfielder. But what Bodo did off the ball was kind of similar to what Gerrard and Beale did at Rangers, which was be really compact, move with the ball. Don't worry if there's men over the other side of the pitch, and keep the space around the ball really compact to stop Celtic in there's kind of rotations and wide overloads that we've seen, particularly in that first half, Derek, at Parkhead in February. So they did that really well, and what that enabled them to do was keep their wingers high or bring them inside. And they scored 2 goals through those quick central transitions that were enabled by a nice compact centre shape. So that was the 2 goals, and the 3 other goals came from a really obvious intention to play through the press. And there's one frame in particular, Derek. I think it's Bodo's second goal at Parkhead. Wembangono, and he's the left back. He's another point we'll touch on. A fullback who was excellent, made lots of dribbles. He has room to kind of dribble up the pitch, but he doesn't do that. And to me, what that signpost says, Bodo, we're always waiting for Celtic to come forward, to commit men before being aggressive and playing through. Because if you can play through them, obviously there's going to be space in behind. Now, whether you can do that, particularly at the back with Alan McGregor, who's, as we know, not probably very clean with his feet in those tight situations, certainly wasn't in the last Old Firm. I don't know, but 3 goals came from that, playing through the press and then quickly exploiting the space in behind. So those are the kind of 2 main things, and obviously we go into a lot more detail. We speak about how, as I say, at fullback there was always the out ball through pressure. So if the Celtic are pressing aggressively, getting up man for man, Bodo Glimt always had a way out. And I think you've seen that a lot with James Tavernier. You've seen that in the Rangers win in Dortmund. If you think of Lundstram's goal, which was the 3rd goal in the evening, Tavernier plays through pressure on the right, switches it over to Kent on the left, and it's always about trying to attract the pressure and then play through it quickly, and then go and play in the areas of the pitch which aren't staffed very well. So there's clear things there. Celtic will also, I'm sure, be looking at the last Old Firm and think there's clear areas we can target Rangers. But as I say, I think last time out, Rangers didn't play to their strengths and also created that environment for Celtic to go and play the kind of football that they want to play. And I'm sure that won't happen to the same degree this time, because I think what we've seen from Van Bronckhorst so far is he's tactically variable, and he's reactive to the opposition. and I think he'll have definitely learned from that and adapted his process. So, Craig's piece yesterday on the site was great as well, looking at how a back five could work. You could do that if you play Lundstram and just drop him back into the defence anyway. But I think there's some clear factors and themes of how you get at Celtic, how you prevent them. And more than anything, Derek, you need to go and attack them, because I think where they're at their weakest is in defence.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew Barclay, this made me chuckle, Joshua. Morning, lads. How to beat them? Score one more than them. Football's a simple game. Good to have your comment there, Andrew. I like this comment as well from Mike Graham. He says he's got the fear like he's just woke up in a random's house in my boxers with 150 missed calls. The battle fever is very much on. Graham Corkin, good friend of the show, also gets in touch as well. Everyone looking forward to this one, but there is a trepidation, I think, with every Old Firm clash. I mean, a lot of people look at it in different ways, of course. But Joshua, I wanted to touch on, you mentioned Craig Vickers there. His piece yesterday talking about Rangers potentially going to a back three. Johnny McFarlane said yesterday that he would be looking to do that. Where do you stand on the prospect of Giovanni van Bronckhorst playing a back three on Sunday?
I think it'd probably be something that he more switches into as opposed to starts. And the reason being for that, Derek, is you look back at his press conference after the Dortmund game, when obviously Rangers had a 4-2 lead, so they had a 2-goal lead to kind of play off. And he was asked about switching to the back five, and he kind of, I can't remember the exact quote, but what he basically implied was, look, we that was an option, and it was a good option. It swung the game for Rangers in the end, but it probably wasn't as aggressive an option as they could have started with. And that's not to say that I don't think that you can be aggressive with a back three whatsoever. But I think when you're looking at this Rangers team and you want to get Joe Aribo, Aaron Ramsey, Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos up the pitch, I would probably start in that 4-3-3, be a lot more compact, move with the ball, move as a team, and then have the option of going to a back three at points. I think if the game was at Parkhead, then I would have been on the back three train from the start. And there's some compelling arguments in there. But I think what Rangers need to do, and what they did so badly in the last game, Derek, was, especially in the first half, I mean, they did everything badly, but they gave Celtic control of their half, and they just gave them pass after pass into the final thirds. And I think in an Old Firm, I think in any game where you're playing against a team that has qualities that can hurt you, unless you're a team that's really, like an Atletico Madrid that wants to play against the ball, you don't want to give up control of that area of the pitch and just allow teams to play into your final third. They have to earn that, and Celtic didn't have to do that in the reverse leg. So for me, I would start with a 4-3-3, be aggressive, press them so high at kickoff, goal kicks, right from kickoff, and have the option of going to a back five. We also know, I think you've seen regularly, that Celtic do tire in games. And I think that the key point is, in Europe, they've been shown to have clear weaknesses. And Celtic are a good team. And as I say, 25 games unbeaten, that's no mean feat. I think they play good attacking football, and you can't knock that. But what do Rangers have to their advantage? Well, they know what Celtic are going to do. Postecoglou says that all the time. He's quite dogmatic in his approach. And Rangers have to use that to their advantage, in the same way that I think one of the Achilles heels of Gerrard at the end of his tenure was teams knew what he was going to do, and that allowed them to plan accordingly. But you've also seen in Europe that when teams are aggressive against them, I think they had the worst defensive record in the group stage in the Europa League. When teams are aggressive against them, they will leave space, because they're so ambitious going forward. There is that space to hit. So it's going to be a fascinating game. Looking forward to going with you, Derek, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But as I say, I think the back five, back three, probably an option in game, rather than the aggressive start that Van Bronckhorst will choose to go for.
Yeah, cannot wait for Sunday. William White gets in touch. Hi, William. He's watching us all the way from Belfast. He thinks Davis should play on Sunday. He would link well with Ramsey. Now, of course, Rob Page, the Wales manager, came out and said that Aaron Ramsey was rested in the friendly against the Czech Republic on Tuesday night, I think it was. But there was a few fears that he may have picked up a slight injury in the World Cup qualifying win against Austria, but that's not the case, and he says he's fit and ready to go for Sunday. I expect Ramsey, I don't know if he starts, Joshua, but in terms of Stephen Davis, of course, playing for Northern Ireland, he's back fit again, ready to play. We've not seen him much in a in a Rangers jersey of late. I think it's unlikely to see him start the game. What do you think?
It's a strange one with Davies, isn't it? And hopefully something that there'll be a bit more clarity over in the next month, because you'd certainly, going into this month, I mean, you think of his season last season, arguably the best player in some players' eyes. I don't think he'll play tomorrow, but you see, if you had him as an option over the next kind of month, I think it would just be hugely beneficial. But obviously, don't know what the situation is there. I doubt he starts on Sunday. I think Aaron Ramsey definitely starts. For me, it will be, I'm sure we'll go into more detailed teams tomorrow, but I think it'll be, without the regulars, which we already know. Hollander will be in it in defence. You'll have Lundstrom, Jack, and Aribo and Ramsey, who I think will be able to do either. I think you'll see Aribo start on the right and Ramsey start centrally, because Rangers will want to be aggressive and play with the ball and press high. And I think Aribo's probably your best option on the right. I don't think he's been great centrally recently. I did a piece on the website about that this week.
Yeah.
And then Kent and Morelos. And then obviously that gives you the option to go to that kind of 5-3-2 where you've got Ramsey and Aribo either side of Ryan Jack, and Lundstrom back into the middle. I think not starting Glenn Kamara would be, a bit of a bane, given how good he's been in previous Old Firms. Maybe you could just start Aaron Ramsey in the front three and Glenn Kamara in the middle, and just really, I guess, give James Tavernier as much attacking freedom as possible. But that would, I think that's the team most likely to start. I think John Lundstrom will be absolutely key on Sunday, and I don't think anyone would be surprised if he just went and had a kind of barnstorming Old Firm performance. Yeah. And Lundstrom and Jack, it was a bit disappointing to see Ryan Jack start, I must say, given the game on Sunday, and from a Rangers supporter's perspective, because you want to be as fresh as possible for Sunday, don't you?
Yeah. No? It's a tough one. For me personally, I think for him, I know how much he loves representing his country. I think there would have been a conversation between himself and Steve Clark about minutes, and I'm not too sure. I think it maybe keeps him ticking over ahead of Sunday. Of course, if he picked up an injury, then it's an absolute disaster. There's no doubt about it. But for me, I don't think there's anything wrong. He wouldn't have gone hell for leather. Of course, it's just a friendly match, so I don't read too much into it. But I think he'll be rearing and ready to go. And I think he's another one, Joshua, on Sunday that's going to have a big role to play, Ryan Jack.
Oh, so important. And just him and Lundstrom together, I think the prospect of that midfield compared to the midfield at Celtic Park, which just was, kind of pulled apart. And obviously since then, I think that was a real learning process for Van Bronckhorst. He's completely ripped up his midfield since then, hasn't he? Away from Glenn Kamara. Glenn Kamara's been playing at the top of midfield instead of the bottom of midfield as he was on that day. So Ryan Jack will be so important. So I think, look, the Rangers will have a more solid base in midfield, undeniably. Whether they go to a back three, whether they start with a four, I think they're a better structured team than they were for that previous game. But then also you'll have to combat Celtic's attacking threats, which are very obvious, and certainly in the last game they'll be confident, and rightly so, because they were so dominant in that first half.
Yeah, most definitely. There's an interesting question coming in here from a good friend of the show, John Dooley, Joshua. He says, what about Ramsey as an inverted right-sided forward so Tavernier can go on the outside? What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, we've written about this on the site, Derek. I think it will be under the tactics section, something that titles something about speaking about Aaron Ramsey not being a number 10, and the reason for that headline is past managers speak a lot about him not wanting to start with his back to goal, but run beyond, and obviously his movement being one of his big, if not his biggest strength in football that's earned him this career as a very high level number 8. So I'd like that. Again, it depends, I guess, how Van Bronckhorst sees the game going. I think when that works well is, and I guess it could work well in this game, is when Rangers maybe don't have as many options to build up. So then, if you think back to the Hearts 5-0 game, where Scott Arfield first played that role under Van Bronckhorst, he just offered a real different option in the middle of the park. But I think with two deep midfielders in a game like this, that probably won't be quite as necessary.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see him given a free role, because I think that's when Ramsey will play his best football. But the midfield three of Jack, Ramsey, and Lundstrom is the one that seems to be popular choice at the moment. And I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. So maybe Joe Aribo starts off the right, and I think the similarities between Bodo's setup and the kind of deal ball setup that Rangers used for 3 years was pretty obvious, and maybe it is just a case of kind of refreshing the memory of a lot of these players of what that tactical setup required and what it did, because I think that could be really beneficial on Sunday. And Aribo played the majority of his old firms, certainly the first couple of seasons, from that right side of the pitch. But Ramsey 100% has to start, Derek. I think it will give the crowd a lift. I think he's fit enough, and obviously he's good enough, and this is why he's up here. This is why he was signed in January, to make the difference in the title race, so let him go and do it in the Old Firm.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Joe Aribo, Joshua, because a number of supporters, I mean, there's no doubt about it, and your piece highlights it. There has been a sort of change in role in a sense, but he hasn't looked as threatening as he did before he went and left with Nigeria for the African Cup of Nations. He looks jaded. I've got to say, I was disappointed to see him play for Nigeria in the 2 matches against Ghana, because I think that the rest would have done him the world of good. Is he too good to leave out, do you think, on Sunday? Because form-wise, I wouldn't be a surprise to see him start on the bench.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, again, that piece is under the tactics section of the website. I'll try and link it before the show's out. But 5 more pressures. He's averaged 5 more pressures in the period after Christmas than before, which is quite interesting. Because it shows he's obviously more active off the ball. But I've nosed it off a comment that Gerrard made after, you remember when he played left back, Derek, against Livingston in a 3-0 win, and Gerrard was very complimentary, and he said something along the lines of, good players can play football, top players can play anywhere. And I think that's almost been one of Aribo's downfalls, is he's not had a set position. But Gerrard went on to say, but he is a number 10. And I think kind of being a bit creative around that idea, what I've tried to conclude is, well, maybe Aribo, to play his best football, does need to play everywhere. Maybe he needs that freedom. And that period in December, the 6 games on the Van Bronckhorst, where he was scoring a goal every other game, he was the best player in the country. He was given the license to play everywhere. You remember the home 3-0 win against Dundee, where he played the first 10 minutes coming wide left, then he was going wide right, and given that attacking freedom. I think that's probably the only real time where he's had that in his Rangers career, Derek, because obviously under Gerrard, he was the most advanced midfielder, and Gerrard wanted to give him attacking freedom, but was always within a system. And Aribo always had to do a lot of defensive work. And when Van Bronckhorst came in for that first month, it looked like a bit of a liberation in terms of his runs beyond, in terms of a little bit more freedom from defensive responsibility, because the whole team was tracking back, and that's a different approach. And since obviously that defeat at Parkhead, obviously Aribo was on AFCON duty. I thought he was very good in the 3-3 draw with Ross County. And then after that, the shape's changed, and it's perhaps a little bit more structured. He's predominantly played not in a dissimilar role to what he played under Gerrard, off the left, where he's advanced, and he's more advanced in the rest of the midfield, but he's more restricted to one side of the pitch, unless that changes in game. And the plan with that, I think, is, again, to try and build up on the right, create vertical attacks, get Aribo and Kent on the ball on the left side of the pitch. But again, that's still within a structure. That's still more structured than the kind of free role that we've seen him have back in December. So maybe it is that for him to play his very best football, he needs that, Derek. I don't know. I agree he looks jaded. I don't think it's through any kind of lack of or drop in effort. But there's certainly something positionally that's changed. You can see that in his touch maps, which are in the piece. And, I wouldn't be surprised if that's perhaps why he's not scored as many goals.
Yeah. Yes, CGM55 says he isn't tired, just out of form. He isn't 33 like Arfield. He's a young guy, just needs a goal or two to get back going. The thing is, he's played almost 50 games this season for club and country. Now, mentally, at this stage of the season, that is a lot of games. That's more than anyone else at Rangers. And with this month coming up, it's just a lot of games to ask him to go to the well. I think that's what I was saying. The games against Ghana, I would have loved to have seen him just rest and recuperate at home and just recharge the batteries. So yeah, I think it's more of a mental issue more than anything else. But yeah, he is a big game player, of course. He is an outstanding talent, and let's hope he gets back to the form that we know he can produce on Sunday. A few questions coming in with regards to Alfredo Morelos and what the situation is with him. We'll find out more when we speak to Giovanni van Bronckhorst. I believe the press conference will be tomorrow. We'll get an update on him, but he's vital. I'm sure we talked about it on Monday, Joshua. Would you play a half-fit Alfredo Morelos in this type of fixture? I think Kemar Roofe, for me, if he's fit and ready, he would be my choice if Morelos wasn't 100% fit. But no one leads the line like Alfredo Morelos. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, true. And again, Derek, if we're speaking about playing into space and maybe trying to hit the space behind Celtic's defence, you look at that Dortmund game and it was a reminder of Morelos of old, how good he can be when he's running into space, when he's isolated against defenders. We've seen that constantly throughout his Rangers career, and Roofe doesn't have that similar ability to get you up the pitch or be a threat in space. So 100% expect Morelos to start, even if he is 75-80%. But, I think reading between the lines, if it's been a bit of a muscle overload, it doesn't sound like anything has necessarily happened, apart from the fact of, as we've seen towards, just before the international break, when he's going off with an ice pack a couple of times, he's just played a lot of football. Maybe he just needed a rest, and hopefully it'll mean that he comes into this game a little bit sharper than he'd been in some previous games. Certainly, you think of Red Star away from home, and he looked pretty tired. So hopefully Morelos is fit to start. But Roofe, maybe this isn't the game if it's going to be very transitional and end to end for him. But, Roofe, you forget those 2 goals he scored against Celtic in May. For me, as I've said 100 times, I just think he needs to play a big part in this run of games coming up, because there's not enough goals in the team, as we've said so many times. So he obviously isn't away in international duty as well, and I think that's an example of a player who you want to have a rest. And with Aribo, obviously, that was an absolutely huge game for Nigeria that lost to Ghana in the end. So you can completely understand why he'd want to be a part of that. But from a Rangers supporter's perspective, you want to be fresh. And I agree. I think although he has looked jaded, I think it's probably a little bit of not a mental thing, but probably a bit of a form thing as well. And he kind of said as much when we spoke to him last about it. So hopefully it's something that clicks for him, or some sort of tiny positional change that enables him to have that attacking freedom that we've seen in December again. Because let's not forget how good he was, Derek, and how much everyone was raving about him during that run of games.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that'll do us there, folks. Thanks to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. Remember that fantastic offer on the Rangers review site. Now, we've got Joshua's piece, really in-depth tactical look at how the Rangers can take homage from Bodo Glimt's performance against Celtic to get a result on Sunday. There's also a great interview there with Jeremy Clement on his time at Rangers. Dado Purso as well. I put the description in the comment section just now. You can have it. You can go and check that out as well. Remember, just £1 for 2 months worth of content, and you also get entered into the prize draw for a tour of Ibrox from a club legend. It really is fantastic. rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. We'll be back again tomorrow, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday.